Stonehenge isn't one mystery. It's at least three, stacked on top of each other, built by different generations who may not have shared a language, a religion, or even a clear memory of who built the earlier phases. One of its stones traveled 150 miles from Wales. Another traveled at least 700 kilometers from Scotland, a discovery that only became public in 2024, overturning nearly 2 decades of assumptions in a single peer-reviewed paper. And the largest stones of all came from barely 15 miles away, meaning the people who built this monument had perfectly good rock close by, and still chose, for reasons never recorded anywhere, to bring some of it from as far away as they possibly could. None of the people who started this project ever saw it finished. Construction stretched across roughly 1,500 years, meaning the builders who dug the first ditch and the builders who raised the final stones were separated by a gap of time longer than the entire history of England as a unified nation. This is the full story of Stonehenge, and why nearly 5,000 years later, archaeologists are still finding new questions inside it. Stonehenge sits on Salisbury Plain in southern England, a wide, relatively flat expanse of chalk grassland that has been used for ceremonial and burial purposes since long before the stones most visitors recognize today were ever raised. The earliest phase of construction at the site began around 3000 BC, not with any stone at all, but with a massive circular earthwork, a ditch and bank enclosure roughly 100 meters across, along with a ring of 56 pits known today as the Aubrey Holes, named after the 17th century antiquarian who first identified them. Cremated human remains have been recovered from several of these early pits, meaning Stonehenge functioned as a burial site for at least part of its history, well before it became the stone circle most people picture when they hear the name. Construction and modification at the site continued in phases across roughly 1,500 years, meaning generations of builders inherited, reshaped, and reinterpreted a monument whose original purpose may have shifted significantly over that span. Salisbury Plain itself was already a significant ceremonial landscape before Stonehenge began, dotted with earlier burial mounds and smaller earthworks, meaning whoever chose this specific field wasn't picking empty, meaningless ground. They were adding to a location that already carried ritual weight for the surrounding communities. Long barrows, elongated earthen burial mounds built by earlier Neolithic farming communities, dot the wider landscape around Stonehenge, some predating the monument's earliest phase by several centuries, suggesting this stretch of chalk downland had already functioned as sacred ground for generations, before anyone dug the first ditch of what would eventually become Stonehenge. The largest stones at Stonehenge, known as sarsens, are a hard sandstone weighing up to around 25 tons each, and for decades, their exact origin was assumed to be somewhere reasonably close to the site without a confirmed source.
The extreme close-up
In 2020, researchers used geochemical analysis to match the majority of the sarsens to West Woods, a specific site roughly 15 miles from Stonehenge, finally confirming what many archaeologists had long suspected. These are the stones arranged in the famous outer circle and inner horseshoe, several of them topped with lintels held in place using mortise-and-tenon joints, a woodworking technique translated into stone, where a carved protrusion on top of the upright stone fits into a matching hollow, carved into the underside of the lintel. This detail alone tells us something important. Whoever built Stonehenge's stone phases had carpentry knowledge sophisticated enough to translate wooden joinery into a medium that doesn't forgive mistakes, since a stone tenon carved even slightly wrong could not simply be planned down and adjusted the way a wooden one could. The sarsens were also dressed using a technique called pick dressing, pounding the stone surface repeatedly with smaller hard stone hammers to smooth and shape it. A slow, labor-intensive process that has left visible tool marks still identifiable on the stones today, giving researchers a direct physical record of the exact technique used, even without any written instructions surviving from the people who used it. Some sarsens also show carved symbols, including representations resembling bronze, axe heads, added sometime after the stones were originally raised, evidence that later Bronze Age visitors treated the already standing monument as a surface worth adding their own marks to, centuries after its original Neolithic builders had died. The bluestones at the center of the monument are smaller than the sarsens, generally under 5 tons each, but their origin is far more mysterious. Geologists have traced them to the Preseli Hills in Wales, roughly 150 miles from Stonehenge in a straight line, and considerably farther by any plausible ancient overland or coastal route. In 2021, a research team even identified the likely original quarry face in Wales, complete with stone wedges still embedded in the rock, direct physical evidence of extraction rather than pure speculation. What has never been resolved is why. Comparable stone existed far closer to Salisbury Plain, and yet Neolithic builders apparently insisted on this specific Welsh source, hauling stones roughly 150 miles using sledges, rafts, or some combination of both, with no wheel, no draft animals suited to the terrain, and no written record of the reasoning. Some researchers have proposed the bluestones may have originally stood as a separate monument in Wales before being dismantled and moved to Stonehenge, meaning this wouldn't be a first construction at all, but a relocation of an already meaningful set of stones. If that theory holds, the bluestones weren't simply raw materials selected for their physical properties. They were an already significant monument, moved wholesale across 150 miles rather than left behind or replaced with more convenient local rock, suggesting the specific identity of these stones may have mattered more to the builders than the practical difficulty of moving them. Some of the Preseli Hills outcrops associated with the bluestones were also linked, in later folklore recorded many centuries afterward, with natural springs and healing properties. A detail that has fed the broader theory that Stonehenge may have functioned partly as a site associated with physical healing, imported alongside the stones themselves rather than assigned to them only after arrival. Sitting flat at the very center of the monument is a single stone that quietly held its own secret for centuries. The altar stone, a 6-ton slab of sandstone, long assumed to share the same Welsh origin as the bluestones around it. In 2024, a study published in the journal Nature overturned that assumption entirely. Chemical and mineral analysis of the stone's grains matched bedrock from the Orcadian Basin in northeast Scotland, at least 700 kilometers away, the longest confirmed transport distance of any stone at any Neolithic monument in Britain. That distance implies either an overland route crossing multiple ancient territories and dense forest, or a coastal sea voyage using boats sophisticated enough to carry a 6-ton load, and no direct archaeological evidence confirms which. The researchers behind the discovery were careful to state that their analysis could identify where the stone came from, not how or why it traveled such an extreme distance. For a Neolithic culture, without the wheel and without any confirmed large seafaring vessel from this exact period, moving a 6-ton stone the length of Great Britain reads less like routine transport and more like a deliberate, extraordinarily costly statement, though what that statement was meant to communicate remains entirely unknown. This single 2024 discovery effectively doubled Stonehenge's long-distance transport mystery overnight. Archaeologists had spent decades trying to explain the 150-mile bluestone journey from Wales. Now, they also had to explain a second, considerably longer journey from Scotland, arriving at the exact same monument, and quite possibly during the exact same rough period of construction. Both journeys also raised the same uncomfortable logistical question. Neolithic Britain had no roads in any sense a modern person would recognize, no wheeled carts suited to this terrain, and no domesticated draft animal known to have been used for this kind of hauling, meaning every mile of both the 150-mile and 700-kilometer journeys was accomplished through some combination of human muscle, timber, rope, and, quite possibly, water. Whatever else Stonehenge was built for, its alignment with the sky was clearly intentional. The monument's main axis lines up with the sunrise on the summer solstice and the sunset on the winter solstice, meaning the same architectural feature marks two opposite, equally significant points in the yearly solar calendar. A long approach called the Avenue connects the stone circle to the nearby river Avon, itself aligned with the same solstice axis, suggesting the entire surrounding landscape, not just the stone circle, was deliberately organized around these two annual moments. Modern visitors still gather at Stonehenge by the thousands every summer solstice to watch the sunrise align through the stones, a tradition that, in some form, may stretch back to the monument's original Neolithic purpose, even if the specific rituals performed there have been lost entirely. The monument's precision here is easy to underestimate. Builders working without writing, without a compass, and without any instrument more advanced than sightlines and patient observation over multiple years, still managed to lock a permanent stone structure onto two exact solar events, an achievement that required either extraordinarily patient astronomical observation, inherited knowledge passed down across generations, or both. Because the sun's exact rising and setting position on the horizon shifts only very slightly year to year near the solstices. Confirming this alignment with real confidence would have required careful observation, repeated across multiple years before construction even began, meaning the site's most famous feature was likely planned years, possibly decades, before the first aligned stone was ever raised. No single group of people built Stonehenge from start to finish. The earliest earthwork phase, around 3000 BC, was likely constructed by Neolithic farming communities, using antler picks and animal bone tools to dig through chalk bedrock. Some of these original digging tools have actually been recovered from the ditch fill itself. The major stone phases, including the arrival of both the Saracens and the bluestones, are generally dated to around 2500 BC, placing them roughly contemporary with the construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza on the opposite side of the known world. Two civilizations independently solving enormous stone-moving problems at almost the same moment in history, with no contact between them. Radiocarbon dating of antler tools, charcoal and animal bone recovered from the site's various construction layers has allowed archaeologists to build a reasonably confident timeline for each phase. Even though no written record from any period explains the reasoning behind the changes between them. Later modifications continued into the Bronze Age, meaning the monument standing today represents choices made by people, separated from the original builders by well over 1,000 years, reworking and rearranging a structure whose original meaning may already have been partially lost to them as well. Some of the Saracens show clear evidence of having been moved, recut, or repositioned from earlier configurations, meaning even the seemingly permanent stone phases weren't a single final decision. They were revised and adjusted across a span of time longer than most modern nations have existed as recognizable political entities. This pattern of continuous revision is part of why Stonehenge resists any single tidy origin story.
Looks like mostly
it wasn't
adult
built
fragments.
once by one culture, with one clear purpose in mind. It was built, rebuilt, and reinterpreted repeatedly by people who may have understood the earlier phases as ancestral, sacred, mysterious, or some combination of all three by the time they added their own contribution to it. Excavations at Stonehenge have recovered the cremated remains of an estimated 150 to 240 individuals, making it one of the largest known Neolithic cemeteries in Britain, a detail that complicates any single simple explanation for the site's purpose. Isotope analysis on some of these remains suggests several individuals grew up considerable distances from Salisbury Plain, in some cases, possibly as far as Wales itself, raising the possibility that the monument drew both stone and people from long distances for reasons connected to status, ancestry, or ritual significance that current archaeology can describe, but not fully explained. Some of these cremated remains were placed directly within the Aubrey holes, decades after those pits had originally been dug for another purpose entirely, suggesting the site's function as a burial ground continued and evolved even as the massive stone construction phases were getting underway around it. Rather than a single function, most modern researchers now treat Stonehenge as a monument whose purpose shifted over its 1,500-year construction history, moving from an early cremation cemetery toward a solar-aligned ceremonial center as later phases were added on top of the earlier ones. Other theories propose a healing site, based partly on the number of skeletal remains at the site showing signs of illness or injury, or a unifying monument meant to bring together separate Neolithic communities from across Britain around a single shared construction project. Though none of these explanations has fully displaced the others, and most researchers now suspect the true answer likely involves several of these functions layered together rather than one single purpose.
Easy now. Lower the main rope
How the
slowly.
stones were actually
Watch the
moved and
alignment on
raised
the east
remains
side.
only partially resolved even today. Experimental archaeology has shown that sarsen-sized stones can be moved across level ground using sledges and wooden rails with surprisingly modest teams, and a possible sledge mark has been documented near the likely sarsen quarry route. Raising the stones upright and fitting the lintels into place using the mortise-and-tenon technique would have required timber scaffolding, ramps, and precisely coordinated lifting, all executed without metal tools, since Stonehenge's major stone phases predate widespread bronze use in Britain by a significant margin. The bluestone and alterstone transport routes remain considerably less resolved, since unlike the sarsens, no confirmed quarry-to-site route, coastal or overland, has ever been physically traced end-to-end. Some researchers have proposed that at least part of the bluestone journey may have used natural waterways, since rivers in the region may have followed somewhat different courses in the Neolithic period than they do today, though this remains a working theory rather than a confirmed route. Whatever the exact path, the bluestone's 150-mile journey and the alterstone's roughly 700-kilometer journey together means Stonehenge, unlike almost any other Neolithic monument in Britain, drew its most symbolically important stones from opposite ends of the island entirely, Wales in the west and Scotland in the far north, converging on one single field in the south of England. Just under 2 miles from Stonehenge sits Durrington Walls, a massive Neolithic settlement that may have housed the workforce responsible for building the monument. Excavations there have recovered evidence of large-scale feasting, including pig bones suggesting midwinter slaughter, and the remains of small timber houses arranged in a pattern that some archaeologists interpret as temporary worker housing rather than a permanent town. If that interpretation holds, Stonehenge's construction workforce wasn't scattered and disorganized. It was housed, fed, and coordinated at a scale that required real planning, not unlike the purpose-built workers' settlements later discovered near the Giza Plateau in Egypt. Pottery and animal bone recovered from Durrington Walls suggest large seasonal gatherings rather than year-round permanent habitation, meaning the workforce may have assembled periodically for specific construction phases and dispersed afterward, a pattern that would explain how a relatively small permanent local population could still mobilize enough labor for a project this demanding when the timing called for it. Modern non-invasive surveying, including ground-penetrating radar, magnetometry, and LiDAR laser scanning conducted across the wider landscape in the 2000s, has also revealed dozens of previously unknown pits, shafts, and smaller monuments surrounding Stonehenge, some buried features large enough to qualify as significant monuments in their own right had they been built in isolation elsewhere, meaning the stone circle everyone recognizes may represent only the most visible fragment of a much larger ceremonial landscape still being mapped today. One such survey, the Stonehenge Hidden Landscapes project completed in the mid-2000s, mapped several square miles of the surrounding countryside without any excavation at all, using purely non-invasive remote sensing technology and still turned up dozens of previously undocumented features, a strong signal that a monument first recorded by antiquarians centuries ago can still surprise researchers using tools those antiquarians could never have imagined. Among the features this project identified were previously unknown pits arranged in patterns some researchers believe may themselves carry astronomical significance, meaning the ceremonial landscape surrounding Stonehenge may be considerably larger and more deliberately organized than the visible stone circle alone has ever suggested. Stonehenge has stood in some form for roughly 5,000 years, longer than the written history of most nations that have studied it. It has outlasted the language of the people who built it, the specific rituals they performed there, and any direct written explanation of why Sarsens from 15 miles away, bluestones from 150 miles away, and a single slab from 700 kilometers away, all needed to end up in the exact same field on Salisbury Plain. Every generation that has studied this monument, from 17th century antiquarians counting pits by hand to a 2024 laboratory matching mineral grains to Scottish bedrock, has found something the previous generation missed. Every major discovery about this monument, the Sarsen source confirmed in 2020, the original Welsh quarry face identified in 2021, the altar stone's true Scottish origin confirmed in 2024, and the ongoing landscape surveys still publishing new results as recently as the past few years, has arrived within a remarkably short window of time. There's no strong reason to think the next generation of research won't find something too. That's the file for today. Tell me which part of Stonehenge surprised you most, and where in the world you're watching this from. Always curious how far this file traveled. Subscribe to Before the Wheel. There's always another file open.